Hey guys, welcome back to another impressions video, and today we're going to talk about Splatoon for the Nintendo Wii U, the latest and greatest new intellectual property by Nintendo, developed by their own EAD studios. And I have to admit, this is a third-person team-based shooter that I had my doubts about picking this game on day one, and in fact I did not pick this game on day one, but after reading so many positive reactions and impressions by people that own the game, I decided to pull the trigger, and now the only regret that I have is not picking this game on day one, because I have to admit Splatoon is a great deal of fun. It's not your typical third-person shooter. It's more than that. It's a very strategic game, but I will delve into the gameplay and how the game plays when I talk about the gameplay, but essentially the doubts that I had about this game were the lack of voice chat, which is still there, is still present, and in my opinion is a huge negative, and the fact that the Nintendo is rolling out the content of the game very slowly throughout the lifetime of the game. So I think that's another thing that kept me from buying the game day one. But like I said, I pulled the trigger, and I'm glad I did, because this game is very, very fun. To begin with, let's talk a little bit about the single-player mode of the game, which is very, very short but very, very fun at the same time. And it's unfortunate that this game mode is very short, because like I said, I was having a lot of fun. And in fact, I would probably recommend, if you guys are new to Splatoon, if you guys just bought the game, to play the single-player mode, because it helps a lot in understanding the mechanics of the game and how everything works. But essentially, the single-player mode, the story is that you have to rescue this great sapfish, which is essentially the energy source for the city of Inkopolis, which is where all these, I guess, creatures live, the Inklings, I think what they're called. And basically, you have to rescue the sapfish from the clutches of the Octarians, I believe it's called, the villains in the game. And like I said, the single-player mode plays, it's not only a third-person shooter type of game, but it's also like a 3D platformer, which is fantastic because I love platformers. And the levels are very unique, very fun, and very, very well designed. They're almost like bite-sized levels that are basically very suited for a handheld. Obviously, this is on the Wii U, but the levels are very short. They can range from 5 to 15 minutes depending on whether you're rushing or not. But the cool thing is that there are collectibles. There's one collectible document in each level that if you collect them, you get a document that helps expand the story of this Splatoon universe. So that's that. There's always that encouragement of going back to the levels to find the hidden document, which I do have to say they're pretty well hidden. You have to sometimes look very carefully for them, but for the most part, again, I had a lot of fun with the single player mode, and it felt a lot like a 3D platformer to me, which is fantastic. And let me just say, without spoiling anything, that the final boss fight of this game is one of the best and one of the most how should I put this? One of the most gripping and tense boss fights that you guys will encounter. Although I do have to admit that the game overall is pretty easy. I did not die a lot in the single player mode, but it's worth just to see that final boss fight, which is fantastic in my opinion, and I think a lot of people have also positive impressions on that final boss fight. But let's focus now on the graphics. No surprises here. Faithful to their, I guess, tradition of making Wii U games, EAD Studios have done another fantastic job. And ever since they released, their first game, their first footprint, which was Nintendo Land, you can see, the footprints of that into this game. Very colorful graphics, very vibrant use of colors, a very specific and nice lighting engine that really gives the game a unique personality. And just an overall, it's eye candy. You guys will, the amount of colors, the vibrant colors, the combination of the vibrant colors with the 60 frames per second gameplay makes up for a very enjoyable visual experience, if you want to call it that. Because since in this game, you're basically shooting paint at, the floor, the walls, and things like that. The colors that they chose for the paint also, they make a huge difference, because they chose like very vibrant colors that really stand out. And when you're playing whether it's the single player mode or the online, the graphics in the game are absolutely fantastic and very, very fun to watch. Now, as far as the gameplay, this is the meat and potatoes of the game. Obviously, the game it's somewhat follows the line of other shooter games in the sense that games like Call of Duty and Battlefield, in the sense that the single player mode is very short, and the main meat and potatoes is the online mode. But the basic gameplay of Splatoon is that you can play both as a human and a squid at the same time. When you're a human, you can use your weapons to shoot at the enemies, and when you're a squid, you can dive into the paint that you shot through the walls or through the environment or on the ground and things like that, which makes up for a very, very fresh take on the third person genre, if you want to call it that, because obviously there's nothing out there like that, like Splatoon. And when you're playing online especially, it makes up for a great disguise or cover based strategy when you're hiding or when you're diving into your own ink. And you can take cover when you're playing as a squid. Yeah, you cannot you cannot be seen basically by the enemy. So it allows you to maybe flank, and as long as you have paint to traverse to, so you have to constantly be in and out, switching between human and squid form in order to either defeat the enemies, but at the same time paint the level with your own colors. So it's a very, very nice fresh take on the third person shooter mechanic, if you want to call it that. So I was very pleased with that. And there are different weapons that you can use in the game. You can unlock, or rather you can collect money, and with the money you can buy different weapons, different pieces of clothing that that's another thing in this game. There's tons of unlockables or tons of things that you can buy, and by using different shoes, different shirts, you have different levels of armor, different types of perks, and the more you spend, the better your equipment, obviously. And the weapons are pretty varied, and they provide different types of, I guess, tactics, because there are weapons that are better suited for long range encounters, medium range encounters, and close quarters. So a very well thought weapon selection, in my opinion, and I'm very impressed with the amount of items and how everything comes together into the overall online experience. Now, as far as one of my own critiques, besides the lack of voice chat, was the fact that Nintendo is rolling out the content of Splatoon periodically. And so far, I believe they have not released every single level. They still have to release a couple of new levels, and they still have to release a couple of new game modes. So a lot of people were upset at that, including myself. But I do have to say that in a way, it was a good idea for Nintendo to do this. And it's not that I'm trying to defend them, but we have to consider that the Wii U has a very small user base when compared to the PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, and things like that. So even popular games like Battlefield or Call of Duty are guilty of this, in which people flock usually to one game mode, which is the most popular. For example, in Battlefield, everybody plays Conquest, and in Call of Duty, everybody plays Team Deathmatch. And with Splatoon, Nintendo tried to be very careful with that, because if they were to release all the content at once, people will only play one specific game mode, and with the Wii U user base being very small, that could be a problem. So I think it was smart of them to release levels and game modes, spaced out. Even though sometimes I don't agree with that, because, for example, the game has 2 maps to choose from every 4 hours. So you may be stuck with 2 maps that you don't necessarily like, and you have to wait for like 4 hours to get the next set of maps, and so on. So the game in a way limits your options a whole lot as far as game modes and levels, but I think it's for the good, for the greater good, if you look at the overall big picture. So in my opinion, Nintendo handled it very well, but at the same time, it's understandable if people are upset and if people want to have that freedom of playing their own favorite levels. But That's one thing that I have to say. Not only me, but even Nintendo themselves are surprised at how well the game is doing. Sales-wise, this game is doing great here in the West and also in Japan. So, in fact, there's a lot of Japanese people. Whenever I play online, I almost every single time get paired up with Japanese people, which leads me to another negative thing about the game, which is the matchmaking. Since I bought the game, I did not buy this on release day. I bought it a couple of weeks after the game came out. And even though I bought it a couple of weeks, obviously this being an online type of game, the people that bought it on day one have a huge advantage because they level up, they gained more money, and they can buy better equipment, better items, better weapons, and things like that. So those people obviously have an advantage, and for new people like me, unfortunately, the matchmaking is not balanced at all. I was playing against people that were level 20, which is the max cap, I was getting basically killed by all these super weapons with extra perks and things like that. And myself, I just had my regular starting weapons. So that was a little bit frustrating. The game does a very poor job of matchmaking or putting you with people of your own same level. So that's another negative thing that I do have to say about this game. But overall, the unlocks, I think for the most part are pretty fast. If you play online and if you stick to the objective, that's another thing that I really like about the game. If you go for the objective, if you're playing Turf Wars, for example, and if you paint a lot of the map, you're gonna get a lot of points and hence a lot of money. So and that's a good thing. Control-wise, the game allows you to use either dual sticks or the gyro on the gamepad. And I do have to say, this game has one of the best uses of the gyroscope that I've seen, and I highly recommend that you guys get used to it. For me, it was a little bit weird. You guys know me; I'm a pretty big Battlefield person. So my first instinct when I played this game was to set it to dual sticks. But I decided to try the gyroscope, and at first it was a little bit awkward. But as I was playing the single player, I basically forced myself to use the gyro controls, and I do have to say that I was very impressed at how quick you can aim and how quick you can adjust using the the reticule with the gyro in the gamepad controller. So yeah, that's my recommendation. Try to get used to the gyro controls because they give you the edge, especially when playing online. Now, I guess another small negative thing is that the game, the main control of the game is the gamepad. The second person or the second player can use a different, like a pro controller, but the game for the most part wants you to use the gamepad, which it has a pretty good implementation because of the gyro, not only the gyro aiming, but also the fact that, for example, when you get killed online and you go back to your base, you can use the gamepad and look at the location of your own teammates, and you can tap on them to spawn in their location. So if you have one teammate that has flanked the opposition, what I do is I spawn on them. That way we have a surprise factor for the enemy, and we can come from behind and not only paint the map with our colors, but also attack them from behind and kill the enemy, which is very useful because when you kill the enemy, it takes a few seconds for the enemy to spawn, and that gives you an advantage because you can paint more portions of the map with your own colors, and until the enemy spawns. So yeah, overall, Splatoon, it's a very fun title. If you guys enjoy online games or online competitive type of games, I highly recommend that you check Splatoon. If you guys don't enjoy online games, the good news is that Splatoon has a very, very fun single player mode that unfortunately is very, very short. So keep that in mind before you purchase the game. It's very, very short. And the amiibos, they add a few extra missions, but unfortunately those missions are not very, they're not new levels. They're just extra objectives for maps that are already existing maps. So the amiibos, they don't add a whole lot of new content, but yeah, if you guys are looking for a single player experience, I would say be careful if to pay full price for this, because it's a very short single player game. You can beat it in maybe 5 to 6 hours. But again, if you guys enjoy online gaming, or if you guys want to have fun with your friends, playing online, definitely check out Splatoon because it's a very fun game. That I have to say, my only regret is not picking this on day one because so far I've been having a ton of fun playing this game online specifically. So that's it for now. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all later.